Minglava to you all. It is the People Goals program. We are having the regular Sunday talk. In 2021 revolution time, the People Goal was set up. And after that, the public talk were followed. So this is the forum for the public activists and everyone participating in this revolution to be able to talk in here. And it's been over 1.5 years that we have in this revolution, and this revolution is ongoing. The ex-military personnel joined in this program and regarding themselves as the defector, joining the public in this revolution in order to get rid of the dictatorship. Today's topic is about the neighboring countries in relationship with our revolution. How are we going to change the attitude in order for them to be in line with our revolution? What public can do so that the neighboring country will change their attitude towards Myanmar revolution? And we have the panelists with us today, and they will discuss about this very topic. When we looked at our neighboring countries, we have India, China, and ASEAN as a whole region. And their role in this revolution are important as well. At the very beginning of the revolution, the military alliance was launched among the youth in order to show their solidarity in our revolution. The world is a village these days. A country cannot stand alone on its own. So it's very important that we have the collective action across the border in order to resist the political waves across the globe. Looking back 2 years time of this revolution, the support of the neighboring countries on the revolution was quite few. So that's why we want to talk about that. And we have experts, and we have activists, and we have experienced individual joining us, Dr. La Chozo. She is the expert on the Chinese issue. And we have Dr. Khin, and she will also discuss with us about the ASEAN perspective. And we also have Salai Naing. He will discuss with us about the Indian perspective on our revolution. First of all, I would like to invite Dr. Lajo Minglava to you. Well, it seems that your microphone is muted. And at the same time, I would like to inform to the audience that you can participate in our discussion through the chat box, through the Q&A box. Dr. Elijah, would you please introduce yourself first so that the public would understand who you are first? So first of all, I would like to ask you to introduce yourself first, and then the Chinese perspective on the revolution, can be discussed after your introduction. My name is La Jozo. I am living in China. I am a Burmese. Back in 1976, I participated in the revolution then. I joined the Burma Communist Party. By 1989, the Burma Communist Party dissolved, and I was in the northern east of the country at that time, and I took asylum in China. Since then, whenever the Myanmar media ask me about the Chinese perspective on Myanmar, I share with my society, with my community, with the media members. I live in China, so the Chinese news, Chinese information, Chinese data by the Chinese government is something that I'm exposed on a daily basis. So we have all this Chinese government paper. I read them as well, and I also live with the Chinese community. When I was in China, the Chinese community in general are not that well off. But after all this time, they are getting better in terms of their socioeconomic status. So I really like to learn then what is the role of a government in order to have the member of public improved. As you all know that we live outside of Myanmar. We live in other countries. And in other countries, the government of the other country really take care of their people. In America, there are good practices of their government, and in Thailand, Thai government also has its own good practices. So that's why I learn about them. I learn about the good thing about the Chinese government so that we can learn in comparative perspective of Myanmar, and I write them as well so that the Myanmar audience would learn the other countries as well. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your introduction. Now I would like to invite Salai Tan for your introduction.
Hello, Minglawa.
Thank you.
Salai
Minglawa, to all of you, I am Salai Tan.
Chin Student Union Myanmar no Myanmar
I
Chin Jong Tameka
am
Ugatha Dawan
currently the president of the Chin Student
Ye
Union.
Dia
In today conversation, I will discuss about what I learned regarding the attitudes and perspective of Indian government on Myanmar revolution. And gentlemen, if you would explain about your position and the current activities that your organization is taken these days, it would be nice. Thank you. We, as the Chin Student Union, we stand on the Chin nationalism in order to get self-rule, shell rule, and self-determination for the Chin nation. We stand together along in line with these values. And in terms of other activities, we also participated in handling the violations of the student rights, and we also work
ကျေးဇူးတင်ပါ
together
တယ်
with
ဟုတ်ပါ
other
ကျွန်တော်ပြည်သူတွေနဲ့လည်း
stakeholders
ဒီချင်းပြည်
for
နယ်
the
ဆိုတာလည်း
improvement
အား
of
လုံးသိ
our
ရတဲ့အတိုင်း
future.
ပဲ
Thank
ကျွ
you.
န်တော်ဒီစစ်အုပ်စုရဲ့ဖိနှိပ်မှု
As
ဒါထိ
we
ခိုက်
all
ခိုက်
know,
နေရတဲ့ပြည်နယ်ဖြစ်တယ်လို့တစ်ချိန်တည်းမှာအိန္ဒိယရဲ့
Chin
နယ်စပ်
state
ပြည်နယ်လည်းဖြစ်
and
ပါတယ်ဒါကြော
people
င့်ကျွန်တော်တို့အိ
are
န္ဒိယ
suffering
နယ်
from
အိ
the
န္ဒိယရဲ့အနေအထားနဲ့
brutal
ဆက်သွယ်ပြီး
oppression
တော့
of
စလိုင်းထန်
the
နိုင်စီကကျွန်တော်တို့
military
Naing
council.
နော်
And Chin state
ဆရာမခင်ဦးမဟုတ်ဖိတ်ခေါ်ပြစေဆရာမမိတ်ဆက်ပေးပါဦးပြီးတော့လက်ရှိဒီ
it's
progressive voice
very
အနေနဲ့
close to
ပါထား
India,
တဲ့အနေနဲ့လည်းပေးပါဦး
so
ဟုတ်
it
ကဲ့
has its own unique
ကျွန်တော်
situation as well.
ပြည်လေးပါ
Now, I
ကျွန်
would
တော်
like to
ကျွန်
invite
တော်
Dr. Khin Ohmar
ကျွန်မနာမည်
from
ခင်ပါ
Progressive Voice. Please introduce yourself. My name is Khin Ohmar.
နောက်ခံတပိုင်းနည်းနည်းအတူလေးပဲပြောရမယ်ဆိုတော့ရှစ်လေးလုံးဒီမိုကရေ
I
စီ
will introduce myself
88
briefly.
ပြီးတော့ကျွန်တော်တို့ဒီ
I
စေအုပ်စုကအဲ့ဒီကာလ
was from 88 student generation,
ဇက်ကိုရောက်ရှိလာတဲ့နေဇက်ကိုရောက်ရှိလာတဲ့ပြီးတော့မှ
and after the military staged the coup, then I
ဒီကျွန်တော်တို့အဖွဲ့နာမည်က
was out of the
progressive
country
ရှေ့ပြေးအတန်လို့ခေါ်တယ်
and I live outside of Myanmar since then. Now I am the head of the Progressive Voice, which is the Myanmar local organization. Around 2017, we emphasize on international advocacy regarding the Rohingya genocide, the act committed by the military. We ask the international community to make sure that the military is to take responsibility and accountability for their action on this Rohingya genocide. Since this Spring Revolution, our organization are
သွေးစည်းညီညွတ်ရေးအဖွဲ့အစည်းတွေကတဲ့
handling
အဖွဲ့တွေပြီးသွားလို့ရှိရင်ကိုယ့်မြန်မာနိုင်ငံကအရပ်ဖက်အဖွဲ့အစ
the
ည်းတွေ
advocacy
ပြီးတော့မှ
activities
ကျွန်တော်တို့ကအားလုံးရဲ့
in
စု
ASEAN
ရဲ့
region and in
ဒါ worldwide
broader international community.
အစိုးရတွေကုလသမဂ္ဂ
With the collective
အာဆီယံ
voice,
အစိုးရတွေကို
we make sure
မြန်မာနိုင်ငံအရေး
the
တုံ့ပြန်
international
မှန်
government,
ကန်တုံ့ပြန်
ASEAN government,
ဒီရမှန်ကန်တဲ့
and
ချင်းကပ်မှု
UN
လို့ဆိုပါတယ်
know our situation and respond
ပြီးတော့မှကျွန်တော်တို့
in line with what people want.
တပိုင်းကပါလဲဆိုလို့ရှိရင်
So
ဒီအကြမ်းဖက်တဲ့တရားမဝင်စေအုပ်စုကို
these are some of
တရား
our
ဝင်မှု
brief
legitimacy ဘာမှ
introductions of our organization.
ဘယ်လိုလဲကျွန်တော်တို့ဒီ
For our organization, we campaign
ဒီစေအုပ်စုစီကို
for
လက်နက်တွေ
no
နဲ့
legitimacy
လေ
for
ယာဉ်
the military regime. And
တွေပေါ်
the
မှာတိုက်ခိုက်တွေအရန်
second campaign that we have, it's
စီဖြတ်တောက်ရေးကိစ္စကိုလည်းကျွန်တော်တို့စီအောင်လို့ဆိုရင်လောက်ပါတယ်ပြီးတော့ဒီစေအုပ်စုကလက်နက်တွေ
to cut off
နိုင်နေတာเนาะ
the
ပြည်သူကိုတပ်ဖြတ်ဖို့အတွက်ဒီလိုအကြမ်းဖက်နိုင်
aviation
ဖို့အတွက်
fuel
သူတို့စီကိုငွေ
so
ကြီး
that the
ငွေကြီး
military
ငွေ
could
ခန္ဓာ
not
ငွေ
bomb
စစ်မှု
its
တွေ
own
ဖြစ်နေတာ
people
သူတို့ဖြင့်
with
ပြည်
airstrike.
သူဟို
And the third campaign that we have is to cut off financial flow to the military regime. And for the fourth campaign, we have this campaign for the military regime to take accountability and responsibility for their violations of international law, including the genocide. As you all know that people are internally displaced within Myanmar due to all this violence, and people are in need of humanitarian assistance. So it is very important that the international community help the Myanmar people through the local responder, local network, rather than assisting the humanitarian needs through the military council. And in terms of ASEAN level,
နီးရှားကအာဆီယံဥက္ကဋ္ဌလောက်ရတော့မယ်ဆိုတဲ့အခါမှာကျမတို့ပို့ပြီးတော့မှအာဆီယံဒီအင်ဒိုနီးရှားနိုင်ငံကအရပ်ဖက်အဖွဲ့အစည်းမိတ်ဆွေအဖွဲ့အစည်းတွေနဲ့
As we all know that Indonesia is
ကျေးဇူးပါဆရာမအောင်မ
the
အခုလို
chair
ညှိနှိုင်း
of
ပေးတော့
the
တာအဓိက
ASEAN,
ဆိုရင်
so we are
ဒီ
now
advocacy လုပ်ငန်းတွေက
working at this level as well.
ထက်ထက်
Thank you very much.
အများကြီးလိုနေသေးတယ်ဆိုတာလည်းမြင်ရမယ်
So
ထင်ပါတယ်
we
ကျမတို့
learn
လည်း
from
တောင်း
you
ဆို
that
တကယ်လည်းလိုအပ်လာတဲ့
there
အနေ
is a lot of
မှာ
advocacy
ဒါတွေလည်းကျမတို့ပြည်သူ
work
တွေအများကြီးအခုဆို
to be
ဒါ
undertaken
progressive point
in the future as well,
လို့တစ်ချိန်ထဲမှာ
and
CSU
people
Khin Student Union စုဖွဲ့
are to
ဆက်လို့ရဆမက
participate
ကြော်စောစီရနေလဲ
in all of this action as well. So
လေ့လာ
now
နေလို့ရတယ်ပေါ့နော်
public learn that we have the panelists, three of them,
ခံအကြောင်းအရာသူတို့လက်ရှိ
with their own unique positions and responsibilities, so they can be contacted.
တွေ့ပါတယ်နော်ဆိုတော့ကျမတို့အခုစကားဝိုင်းရဲ့မိ
So
ခွန်း
this round of introduction is to make sure that we
စပြီးတော့
are
မိ
familiar
ခွန်း
with
ရင်စ
the panelists. Now we will go to the
မိ
theme
ခွန်းတွေ
of our tonight conversation. First, I would like to invite
အရင်စပြီး
Dr.
မိ
La
ချင်တာ
Chao
တော့ဒီတရုတ်နိုင်ငံရဲ့အနေထား
What I
ပေါ့
would
နော်
like to ask you, it's about the Chinese position. What's going on in the reality in China? There is this white paper revolution happened in China. Youth had
တိတ်ပြီးတော့သတင်းမီ
all
ဒီယာ
sort
မှာ
of
လည်း
campaign against Xi Jinping. But after that, we did not know much about China since then. And we don't know much about the reality of China. So I would like to ask you what people should know about China and what would be the key information that we need to learn about China, because we don't know about them much in terms of their reality. Thank you. Well, as I mentioned earlier, in China, there are information, there are data, there are news, but majority of them are from the government sources. But there are also other opinions as well in the country. But then again, I try to follow the Chinese information from the mainstream papers and mainstream media, I would say, and I don't know all the details of the Chinese language as well. But then again, the revolution that you mentioned was Shanghai, actually. It's not in Beijing, actually. But then again, there was this start of COVID. There were quarantine, lockdown, and people are now very fed up with all this quarantine situation after all these years. And with all this other country celebrating the public event, relaxing all the COVID restriction, and Chinese people know that, and they would like to have that kind of situations as well. And there was this big fire, and that big fire made people angry as well. So the mood of the people at this moment is not very good. But there was this one-day demonstrations as well in a particular place in China, but it was just only one day. But another thing is that the Chinese government seems very much on top of strange dynamic, I would say, and it seems that the Chinese government try to accommodate the sentiment of the Chinese people, so that's why they are having all this COVID restriction relaxed. And Regarding the Chinese government, what I would like to say, it's about our impression on them. The Western media would exaggerate the Chinese issue. For Xinjiang incident, it was there were 3 million of them, and now their population is getting bigger. But then again, this minority issue was portrayed by Western media with their own agenda, but it does not reflect their reality actually. And I also learn what Chinese government does for the public. I regularly write the article about them. But I'm not saying that the Chinese government are all perfect and are all good. There were billions of population in China, but then again, Chinese government usually is very quick in handling country issue. But of course, they cannot be perfect with all this massive population. But then again, with all these COVID measures, they were quick and they are now having COVID restriction relaxed, and they also release the number of casualty, the number of deaths due to COVID implication very recently. What I read very recently is that there were 60,000 casualty very recently, and they also announced that among 60,000, 5,900 died due to direct cause of COVID, but the rest died with their underlying disease. So this is something that I learned. But then again, what I can observe is that they opened up everything. And yesterday, what I noticed is that there was announcement that by the 22nd of this month is going to be the Chinese New Year. So they anticipate that there would be another wave of COVID. But what I'm trying to say is that there, I did not mean that they don't have COVID, but yes, they have COVID, but they try to control it. They were quick in controlling them. And of course, there are people supporting their government, and there are people do not like their government as well. But then again, Chinese image has been portrayed very exaggerated way by the Western um, countries, I would say. But their people these days are trying to celebrate their New Year's. I live in Yunnan, in Siksongpana area, Dali area. They are very busy in preparing their ceremony. Their hotels are all fully booked, actually. So basically, all their people mind are very much, and all their people
ဒါပေမဲ့
mood
ရှင်း
are very much with their New Year celebration.
နိုင်ငံမှာနေနေတဲ့လူတော်မှာအပြည့်အစုံသိချင်မှလည်းသိနိုင်မယ်ပေါ့နော်နံပါတ်1ကတန်းကိုကျယ်ပြန့်
Well,
တဲ့
what I learned from your discussion is that
ဆိုလဲဒီလူများစု
since
သုံးတဲ့ဒီ Facebook လိုမျိုးက
China
အဲ့မှာစံစာလုပ်ထားတယ်
is
ပေါ့ပြောမယ်ဆိုသုံးမရ
extremely huge country with
ကန့်သတ်မှုကတော့ရှိတယ်
the
ဆိုတော့
biggest population in the
ပြီးတော့
country,
ပေါ့နော်
so
တော်လိုင်းမြန်မာပြည်ဘက်ကိုကြည့်မယ်
not
ဆိုရင်
everyone would
အရင်ဆုံး
know
ဒီ
about
တော့
their
Facebook
country.
ဆိုတာနဲ့ကို
That is
ဒီ
what
ကျမ
I
တို့ဟို
have the impression from your
တန်ရုံးရှိ
discussion.
မှာတော့ထိုင်တာရှိတယ်
And
ပေါ့နော်တန်ရုံးရှိမှာတော့
there
ထိုင်
are
ကြ
also some
ရုရှားတန်ရုံး American
information restriction by the government as well.
ဆန္ဒပြကြတာအများကြီးအဲ့ထဲမှာမှတရုတ်နို
And
င်ငံပေါ်မှာဟိုပြည်သူ
another
ရဲ့
thing that I would like to share
ထင်တယ်ဒီတရုတ်နိုင်ငံဆိုရ
my
ဖိအား
experience with you during our peaceful demonstration.
လန်နေမိရှို့တာဒီတရုတ်
People gather in front of
နော်ဒီ
Chinese embassy in Yangon,
မိရှို့တာအဆင့်ထိကိုကျွန်တော်
showing
သွားတယ်ပေါ့နော်ပြီးတော့အရက်ဖက်ဖွဲ့စည်းကြီးညာချက်တွေထုတ်ထားတာတွေ
very negative sentiment
ဆိုရဲဆိုတာမျိုးပေါ့နော်ဆိုမျိုးကောက်ဖို့
against China.
ဒီချစ်ကြည်ရေးကိုကောင်းစေချင်တယ်ဆိုရင်
And
သူ့ဆိုဒါ
Chinese government factory
တော့တရား
were burnt down
ဆိုတာမျိုးတွေ
then,
တော်လိုင်းမှာပြောတယ်ဒါအဲ့ဒါရဲ့
and
နောက်ဆက်
people
ပေါ့နော်ဟိုတရုတ်ရဲ့အမြင်က
ask for
ခံပြီးတော့ तू ကအခုလက်ရှိဒီစေအုပ်စုနဲ့
China to dissociate its business and its project with the military council. And another particular point that I would like to understand from you is
မိတဲ့ဟာကိုကျမ
about
တို့
their new foreign minister. What is his opinion? What is his position on Myanmar? Thank you. Chinese foreign policy might have some changes, but in terms of their core foreign policies and values and principles, in terms of the big frame, main frame, they won't change much. For example, in 1988, the Chinese government then completely support the military government at that time. They assisted the military government, they supported the military government then, they use veto in UN in favor of the military government at that time. But we had this Nyetson Dam incident in Myanmar, in which the people show very strong negative feeling about that against China. And it seems that China realized the attitude of Myanmar people towards them, and they try to accommodate their interests and as well as Myanmar people feeling towards them as well. But then again, every country will calculate their interest and as well as what other people would think of them as well. In Dawn San Suu Kyi government time, the NLD government time, the relation between Myanmar and China was the best in the history. Back in 2015, the state official visits between two countries were made. I think, not that I think, what I learned from other people that anti-China sentiment was actually used by the military for their own benefit. They started it actually. And now, Chinese position is in this Spring Revolution, the Chinese position is very much to support ASEAN in dealing with Myanmar issue. But in terms of the global perspective on China, they use multi-track relationship with every country. And in terms of the business perspective, they have this RCEP, including 10 ASEAN countries and 5 Asian countries, China, South Korea, Japan, Australia, New Zealand participated in it. This is the biggest economic zone actually. So RCEP was endorsed very recently. So in coming year, 30% of the business relationship will be increased. So basically, China is trying to have the biggest supply chain in China. And of course, when it comes to business relation, economic relation with Myanmar, they have to establish it. And they know that their relationship with military council alone will not work. And they also know how Myanmar people see them. So that's why they try to be neutral as much as they can. And I also read somewhere that China did not reply the invitation of the economic meeting invited by the military council. And you might also notice that China intervened in military council plan to blacklist the NLD. And I think that Chinese government really understand what Myanmar people want, and they try not to stand on the side of the military council. That is what we are seeing as well. Thank you. And indeed, they are not supporting the military council like they did back in 1988 military government at that time. Thank you.
အဲ live အသီးသီးကနေနားထောင်နေကြတယ်ကျမတို့ပြည်သူတွေပါဝင်ဆွေး
And we learn new things from you in terms of Chinese perspective on us.
ထားပြီးတယ်เนาะအဲ့
And
ဒါ
we
လေး
have over thousands of audience joining with us. So I would like to encourage the audience to participate in our discussion, raise your question regarding what you learn on Chinese perspective. Now, I would like to invite Salai, Thang.
ကိုယ်တိုင်လဲเนาะအိန္ဒိယနီးစပ်တဲ့
Let's
လူတွေ
talk about India.
ဒါပြောရမယ်ဆိုရင်
You
ဒီရန်ကုန်
are very much close to India
အိန္ဒိယနဲ့
since you live in Chin State.
ဒါမိတ်ဆွေတွေတငယ်ချင်းတွေ
Like, unlike the people in Yangon or in Mandalay, the people in Chin State have a very close proximity to India. But these days, Myanmar people disappoint the positions of India. India appoint the ambassador as the first country appointing ambassador in Myanmar in this military regime, and people shocked about their position. India is the biggest democracy country in the neighboring countries. But then again, what happened with them? What Indian people see Myanmar revolution? Can you please share based on your experience? Thank you. In terms of Indian relationship with Myanmar, as far as I learn and understand, we have the longest historical relation between the two countries in the colonial period, in diarchy regime, in British 91 department regime. We were very much close to India. After independence, there was very much close diplomatic relationship between the two countries. But now, in this movement and in the revolution movement, to begin with, starting from 1988, people uprising, the Indian foreign minister then report in UN that India would stand with the side of what Myanmar people wanted. But then again, after all this time, contradictory to what they promised in UN, or at least what they said in UN, they on the other hand, instead had very much close engagement with the military. Now, in 2021, we had this military coup. We don't see much changes in terms of Indian government perspective. They seems not very much interested in our people movement, in our revolution. I think the Indian government does not trust our revolution. I have the impression that the Indian government does not think that the revolutionary forces could not control the territories in Myanmar. But in Chin State, in Mizoram State, for example, Mizoram State is the autonomous state. In Mizoram State, they have this self-determination, and they play very critical role for us, for our revolution, for our federal democratic future, in order to have the attention of the Indian government. The revolutionary groups have to think the way to approach the Indian government. But then again, in Mizoram, I was talking about Mizoram, there where there are local groups in Mizoram states, and they are partner organization with us. And if all these brother sisters organizations in Mizoram would ask the Indian government
to
to stand together with the Myanmar people, it would be nice and it would make some changes, in my opinion. So it could be a way as well. And another thing that I would like to talk about is that the revolutionary forces would need to create
လောက်ရမလဲဆိုတဲ့အ
an
ပိုင်းကိုသွား
environment
သေးတယ်နောက်တစ်ပိုင်းပေါ့နော်ဆိုတော့ဘာလို့
that
တင်တယ်လဲ
would
ဉာဏ်တွေလည်းရှိကြမယ်လို့ထင်တယ်
be
အဲ့ဒီပိုင်း
trusted
နောက်တစ်ပိုင်း
by the Indian government. Thank you.
ဒါကတော့ဒါအိန္ဒိယနဲ့ဒီမြန်မာပြည်အနေအထားကိုသုံးသပ်
Next,
လှည့်ပြီးသွားတာဆိုတော့လက်ရှိဆွမ်းနာဒီရပ်ဘက်အဖွဲ့အစည်းတွေနဲ့ထိစပ်ဆောင်ရွက်နေရတယ်လည်းရှိရလို့ပြောတယ်
we will talk
လေကြောင်းတိုက်
about
ခိုက်မှုဆိုတဲ့
what
အဲ့ဒီ
we will do
ပြီးတော့မသိ
in
သေးတဲ့
the
လူတွေလ
second
ည်းရှိ
round
နိုင်တယ်အဲ့လက်
of
ဒီချိနဲ့
conversation.
အိန္ဒိယနယ်စပ်တွေမှာဘယ်
But
ဖြစ်နေသလဲ
I
Now,
would like
India
to ask you about
သူတို့ရဲ့နိုင်ငံရေးအခြေအနေဘယ်လိုရှိလဲအဲ့ဒါလေးလဲဟို
about
ကျမ
the
တို့ပြည်သူတွေ
ground
သိအောင်
situation.
ပြောပြပေးပါဦး
What's going on at the border area between Myanmar and India? Technically speaking, the Mizoram state. What's going on? People would need to know what's going on. If you would share about that ground situation. As many people know that, the Victoria camp of the Khin National Front was bombed a couple of times by the military council. And some of the bombs from the airstrike landed in India. But we haven't heard any reaction or any response from the India about that. In terms of our experience and observation, the airstrike of military council was probably informed in advance by the military council to India government. But then again, it's very clear violation of the international law that the military council have their fighter jet in Indian airspace. But the Indian government hasn't responded anything about that yet. I think it's very disappointing indeed. For the airstrike of the military council, the reason Victoria Camp incident was the very first incident that they attacked the headquarters of the ethnic armed organization. In terms of the position of the CNF, it's in line with the people, it's in line with the collaboration together with the NUG. So basically, CNF is the only ethnic armed organization having the formal agreement in this revolution. So basically, the military council announced the NUG as an illegal organization, and it might be the reason that they attacked the CNF as well, because CNF, as I mentioned, is the only formal ethnic organization working together with the NUG.
လေးနေရတာဖြစ်တယ်အခုလေကြောင်းတိုက်ခိုက်မှုကြောင့်ဒီအရတား
And in terms of the border
စီရအရ
area,
တားတွေလည်းတန်ရာရတယ်
the border area is very important for
ပြီးတော့
the
ဆေးစီခန်း
for Chin people, for everyone, for the
တားရိုကျွန်တော်ဒီ
humanitarian assistance access due to all this airstrike.
international ဒီ
All this
humanitarian law
infrastructure got damaged.
right again humanity
And what we can say is that
ဒီနိုင်ငံတကာ
the breaching of the international law, breaching of the international humanitarian law, breaching of the crime against humanity,
ကျွန်တော်တို့ဖက်ကတော့ဒီ
it's
ကျွန်တော်တို့လက်လက်မိတဲ့ဒီမီဇိုရမ်ဖက်ကနေပြီးမှအရက်ဖက်အဖွဲ့အစည်းရဲ့အနေနဲ့လူငယ်ចောင်းတာစီရဲ့အနေနဲ့ဒီအခြေအနေကိုအိန္ဒိယဖက်မှာ
for
အိန္ဒိယဖက်
our
မှာမိုင်းကြတဲ့ကိစ္စတွေရောဒါတစ်ဖက်မှာလည်းကျွန်တော်တို့ဒီ
public-based organization
ချင်းလူမျိုးဖြစ်နေတဲ့အတွက်ကြောင့်ပေါ့ဒီမှာရက်တည်ပြီးဖို့ဟိုအစိုးရကိုတောင်းဆိုပြီးဖို့ကျွန်တော်တို့လုပ်နေကျွန်တော်ဥပမာအဖြစ်ကချင်ပြည်နယ်ကို
would like to say that we are trying to advocate the Indian government, asking them to stand together with what Myanmar people desire. Just to give you another example, if
ဒီဆန္ဒပြတောင်းဆိုမှုတွေလုပ်တဲ့အခါကျတော့တရုတ်အစိုးရကလည်းသူ့နိုင်ငံ
the KIA headquarters, Liza, would be bombed like they did to
စစ်
CNF,
ခေါင်းဆောင်တွေနဲ့အပြည့်ယူလုပ်လို့မရ
would China tolerate about that? I don't think so. So it is very important that we have to advocate the Indian government, and it is very important that Indian people also ask their own government to stand together with Myanmar people. That is what we are doing. Thank you. You mentioned about the Victorian camp incident. They bombed 2 times within 2 days. And international media coverage about that incident was not that much. This is the incident that we really need to make sure that people realize about that. Talking about India, India is a very big country and they have their own complexity in terms of their government, in terms of their Indian people, but nevertheless, India should show a very clear standpoint in line with what Myanmar people want. And in terms of our society and community, our people are there and their people are in Myanmar as well, so it's very important to establish people-to-people relationship in order to advocate their own governments as well. And now, let's talk about ASEAN. I would like to invite Dr. Ohmar in order to discuss about what can be expected from ASEAN, what are the progress these days with ASEAN. Thank you. As you all know that we have 10 ASEAN member countries, and we have Thailand, a very important country, and we have the longest border with Thailand, and like India and China, Thailand is also very much important in our dynamic, in our revolution. As you all know that ASEAN is spearheaded in dealing with Myanmar issue. UN supported this approach. So ASEAN, collectively speaking, they would approach the Myanmar situation in a very compromised manner, in my opinion, because a particular country out of 10 ASEAN countries would not have a complete different voices. Recently, there were meetings in ASEAN levels. There is some significant situations that I would like to mention. The ASEAN founding countries, such as Indonesia, Singapore, Philippines, did not join some of the meetings that would be attended by the military council. In 2022, there were elections in Philippines and in Malaysia, and there is concerning dynamic in Philippines. The son of Marcos is now the president of the Philippines, the son of the dictators, is now taking the office, the highest office. So how he is going to make sure the democracy of Philippines is enhanced. So we really have to follow it and watch it. And talking about Malaysia,
အဖမ်းခံလိုက်ရလိုက်ထောင်ချခံလိုက်ရလိုက်ပြန်လွတ်လာလိုက်နိုင်ငံရေးဆက်ကြိုးစားလိုက်နဲ့ဒီ Anwar Ibrahim ပေါ့နော်ဒီ Anwar ကနေပြီးတော့မှဝန်ကြီးချုပ်ဖြစ်လာတယ်
is this opposition leaders
ဝန်ကြီးချုပ် Anwar
who was in and out of the prisons, like
သူနဲ့သူမိသားစုက
Dawn San Suu Kyi of Myanmar, Anwar.
တူဖြစ်တယ်ပေါ့နော်အဲ့တော့ဒီရွေးမတိုင်ခင်မှာလည်းကျမတို့ဒီမလေးရှားနိုင်ငံရေးဝန်ကြီးဌာနနဲ့တွေ့ဆုံ
now holding the highest office as the Prime Minister in Malaysia.
ဒီဟိုပါဗလဲSouthern soဒီအရင်နိုင်ငံခြားရေးဝန်ကြီး Southern ဆိုလဲကျမတို့တွေနဲ့အစည်းအဝေးလည်း
We also
ဝန်ကြီးဌာနတူတွေဆိုလဲကျမတို့လုပ်တဲ့ဒီ
met a lot with the
စကားပြောပွဲတွေပါတယ်မှာတော့မှလာ
Foreign Minister of Malaysia,
မှာတော့အစိုးရအပြောင်းလဲဖြစ်တဲ့
and he also joined some of our panel discussions as well, and we learned from them that in terms of their Malaysian government changes, between them they will not have changes in foreign policy. The Prime Minister Anwar troubled in the region. He met with the president of Indonesia. He mentioned that Myanmar situation is to be worried for the security concern of the ASEAN region. This is quite a significant remark that he made. They never talked about that tone, with that tone in the past. Another thing that I would like to say is that there will be election in Thailand in 2023, and there will be election in Indonesia in 2024. So this is going to be very much busy period in the region.
Indonesia
is now the chairman of ASEAN starting from this January. The Indonesian election is going to be in 2024. So in 2023, the current government will have to work very hard on Myanmar issue. They will have only 9 months. Statistically speaking, the time is not that much left for the current government. So we need to be very effective and efficient in dealing with the new chairman of the ASEAN. Another thing that I would like to talk about is that the Indonesian Constitutional Court has a case. That case is about non-Indonesian citizen can be prosecuted by the Indonesian court. So there was this case that the Indonesian want to handle that kind of case. So they are waiting for the decision. If the decision would be yes, then there would be possibility that the military council, Myanmar military council, the junta, can be prosecuted in Indonesian courts, I'm sorry. So, talking about that, in Argentina court, Myanmar military is sued for the Rohingya issue. And if Indonesia would have this kind of jurisdiction, if their constitutional court would say yes as a decision, then it would be a chance as well for our future possibility of prosecution. Thank you.
Thank you, Siama, for sharing. Looking at this, we have seen that ASEAN is changing ideology, especially the most progressive countries are trying to think different way. But then ASEAN also need to have that agreement consensus among the other ASEAN countries as well, and that means there's still a lot of efforts to be done for US or the China or ASEAN to change perspectives. It depends on how consistent the people of Myanmar has been able to push forward. If we can say that, and then people they will realize that they cannot do whatever they want to, and that's the situation. I think based on your sharing, we can see that the efforts of the committee means a lot, and in fact. We have listened to the ASEAN basic way of thinking as well as on the China way of thinking as well, and we have a lot of participants joining us. We also see a lot of people who have raised hands and will be calling to the people as well. I also would like to share some of the comments that have been raised as well. Some of the comments that make are more of recommendations for us, that what kind of recommendations shall we make to the NUG, to the PDF, to the Revolutionary Front, and that we also would like to know, and we also would like to share also the ideas and what people have been thinking as well. And that one comment made here is that it is that the leaders of the neighboring countries and as well as all the energy leadership, they should meet in the third country. The way that China is going is that it's because they are also letting people have some freedom, is what they don't want to do is absolute control over as a communist government as well. It is that what the comment that the person our participant is making comment is that to what extent the issue about the weapons, to what issue about the fighting, to what extent they can control it, what the other countries are doing. That's what we are reading from the comment as well. We also have received a few questions for Dr. Lat Joso. So may I invite Dr. Lat Joso once again? We have the questions. We have received questions from participants. We also have prepared some questions. What the people go team would like to know is what will be your credible recommendation for us, looking at the China situation, that if China is not actively opposing the situation, at the same time they're trying to stay neutral. They are not really supporting the revolution either. So how do we convince China? How do we mobilize China to support the revolution, to support our movement? What can we do? What would be your concrete advice for people of Myanmar? As for me, I think it was partly you have mentioned it in your remarks, Thinzar, that not all the neighboring countries, not just major neighboring countries or small neighboring countries, their foreign policy is based on their own interests. But people of Myanmar needs to be consistent. We need to ensure that our momentum for the revolution, our resistance against the military is strong. And if we are consistent, then doesn't matter how they want to, whenever they want to work with the military, they have to refrain themselves from doing so. That what our duty is, that the suffering of the people of Myanmar it all stems from the military dictatorship. We all need to understand that. We all need to make that point that the Spring Revolution is a culmination point of past 70 years of military dictatorship. This is the ultimate battle against the regime. It is important that we continue consistently, we continue strongly, we'll be able to work harder, not just for China, not just for the ASEAN 10 countries or not just for India. They will be compassionate, they will have empathy. Doesn't matter how they want to approach, how they want to approach the military for commercial reasons. They have to think about that. This is what we need to do. It is our mindset, our commitment revolution needs to be strong. Our dynamics for the revolution needs to be strong. We need to remain united and strong against the military. That is important to show that to not only China but also other countries. And our neighboring countries have their strategies. We need to look at their strategy. What can we do? How can we gain from that? What is the strategy of China? China's strategy is looking at the future. China said that countries of neighbors of a shared dynasty. That's what China said. And that's what China is trying to build by becoming a world leader, global leader at the UN platform as well. And one of the claims China made is for peace. That China is, they said, they claim that there must be peace. Only when there will be development. Development needs peace, and peace peace will bring development. And that's what China is always saying. China is trying to implement that in various ways as well. If you look at this, the Silk Road or the One Belt One Road or the others, all this come to this progress and peace go together. And since Myanmar and China are touching borders, that the border ethnic arm organization have been approached by China for this reason. Wa State, Myanmar, all these, even in these smaller areas, China want to ensure that they have they had control. Well, they have that they are trying to get development in this area. They are to ensure there is development. It doesn't matter how slow the development has been in this area. They are doing these pilot areas where they are trying to bring development to these areas to see there is development, it brings stability, and that is not bad for us. For Wa State or for Mola, doesn't matter where it is. For where the area, these other areas that we should not harm them. We should not attack them because they are not working with the PDF or they are not, they join the PDF. It is important to understand their situation. It's important to understand their context. It is also important to build a relationship with them so that we can have a better relation with them in the future, also with the NUG or the PDF. From the China side, that one of the suggestion is make the China to meet with the energy leaders in other country, but China diplomacy is a very, very distinct. They keep very low profile. They do not do microphone. I think Dr. Mao used the word silent diplomacy. I read it in one of her interviews. Yes, China preferred to be very low key and very discreet and very low profile. And China always have a widespread multi-stakeholder communication. China will communicate with the military. They will communicate with all the EUs in the border areas, and they would probably communicate with the NUG as well. But we cannot say that it wouldn't. What we need to do, as I have explained, is that some of the news information that we are hearing, we are reading, are fake news or the disinformation, misinformation, and that yes, it was one of the comments made that China is focused on the China will not will not have any impact on the Chinese Communist Party. Communist Party is something they hold tightly to. The leadership of the Communist Party will not undermine. You can criticize, you can take action against any form of leadership. You can even take legal action against certain leadership, but not the leadership of the Chinese Communist Party, which is considered sacred. I think it is important for us to understand China as well, that the Chinese context, and that what is the bottom line for China. And if we do not harm or damage the bottom line, then we'll be able to push hard for our revolution, for our country. We'll be able to push very quietly for what we want, and without doing a disinformation or misinformation campaign, we should be able to approach China successfully. That's what China is showing about it. China always talk about that peace and development. Every country has the freedom to choose for its own path to development. Only when there is development in every country, there shall be peace. That's the Chinese philosophy. And like our representative from Chin State is talking here, when the Konkan crisis happened in 1995, I think that the military, used artillery, and then about 2 citizens were killed, something like that. But China make a very very strong warning to the military, to any of the border organization. Nobody shall use artillery, and then artillery shall, if the artillery, fires in China, they will take strong action. China is very clear about it. The same goes for Kachin as well. Along the borderline, there is a Kachin on this side, a Kachin in China side. So when there is a fight in Kachin state, that China have closed that border because they don't want Kachin IDPs to come there. And the Kachin in the China side, they don't agree. They push the China. They go against the government of China. They want to protect their own Kachin. So they push hard, and that the walls were not, the China were not able to control, and then they were able to set up even an IDP camp in the China side where Kachin community is very united. So the Kachin communities living in China, they rally and they raise funds to provide assistance to the Chinese IDP. China also does a lot with the Mala and the KIA. China has provided COVID vaccination. You have the teams which are going into the different parts of these ethnic areas to provide COVID vaccination as well. So China is working under the topic of peace and development, and they use different approaches. And we need to consider this an opportunity to make China understand why it's important for us. Like our Qing, we have the Qing representative from the Qing Youth Organization has said it is important to make China understand what the people want, what the people need, and we need to convey that message politely and effectively as well. As long as the military dictatorship is Myanmar and people of Myanmar will never have peace, there will never be development. And that's the message we need to give clearly to them as well. It is important that we show this in different ways, using different approaches, so that China sees it and that China understands it. But this way, China have no choice but to think about the people of Myanmar. That's what we need to do. Thank you, Dr. Joso. My opinion, when we approach China, it is important to use the silent diplomacy. It is also important that we also use different approaches to convey the message as well, that there will be people who might also mobilize on the ground and demonstrate as well. And the demonstrations or the public mobilization could be a strong message for China to say, people of Myanmar really want this, and that as Myanmar have shared before, yes, China also seems to be changing the way its action towards Myanmar. That could also be considered as a follow-up impact for that as well. So we are now going into the recommendations. So these recommendations are important. It is important that we will put all these recommendations together and produce a summary. We also will post them on the Twitter page as well as on the website of People's Code team as well. Regarding India in 2023, that for the people of Myanmar, or that for the Niger government, the approaches may differ. So any recommendations from Salai from the Chin Youth Group? India is also organizing elections very soon. So in such context, approaches are very important. That the changes of the political parties, the different positions of the political leaders are also important for Myanmar. It can also have impact on the people of Myanmar too. On the other hand, NUG approaches to India also depends, is also well influenced a lot on it. Right now, India and the NUG seems that in terms of approaches to India, it doesn't seem very satisfactory. I don't think it's very strong in the NUG approach towards India, especially to a fellow democratic nation. It is important to look into consideration what India wants and what's the will of India as well. At the same time, that it is also important we need to be able to reach out to the people of India as well. This idea is important not only for the India government, but also the India people. And why is India not encouraging? Why is India ignoring Myanmar Revolution? Why is India, just focus on communicating with the government? It doesn't matter which government is power, India only engage with the government. What is that happening? In my opinion, it has also been shared as well, that because they don't believe that this revolution could be successful. That's one point. Another is that this revolution process, people think that our revolution does not have impact on the stability or the peace or the world peace or world stability, and that India thinks that a revolution in Myanmar doesn't have any impact on India and its stability. So in our approach, it is important to highlight that the instability in Myanmar is instability to the world, is instability to the region. That it is important to convince them that conflict and instability also impact on them. We have experience already that Rohingya issue, the Rohingya crisis in Myanmar, it's a internal stability that it had impact on the region and ended up with a case in the ICJ. That the crisis in Myanmar it is important to show that the crisis in Myanmar impact on the region and the world globally as well, that the crisis in Myanmar will also has a potential to impact on the stability in India as well as on the Indian politics and India's stability. If we can make that point very clear, then India, rather than engaging with the military or supporting them, they would put pressure on the military. For example, like India could be stricter when the Myanmar military is attacking the border areas using area strikes, and that in the domestic fighting, that for the military to use that air force, there are limitations to that. Despite that, the military is good at air strike using the airspace of the neighboring countries, and they would attack indiscriminately without differentiating the civilian target, and that is a great violation of the human rights of the civilian. They are also violating international rights, and since they are violating international rights, that could have an impact on their international stability as well. That means that if there's the stability and the instability, but of the stability in India, then people of India will not be happy. I think it is important for us to approach that, to bring these points to light as well. In the consideration, they are saying that people of Myanmar is that especially that it is a revolution led by the people, led by the young generation. But this young generation will grow, and then this government will have to engage with the youth, will become leaders. In that case, that if you don't have a beautiful history in the past, then the future relations will be in great difficulty as well. And that's something our neighboring countries need to take into consideration as well. So Tanai and the youth are talking about it. We have this kind of history is not good for India as well, because people are saying that they didn't do anything, and they are in action, and they are being complicit to this. The military has caused all these issues as well. So thank you for the points that you have raised. I would like to ask a question to Siama Kyaw for that and that for the NUG, and that as well as on the for the others. What should NUG do in 2023, or what should people up to do in the 2023 as well? Before we go into that, may I also start sharing about something about China and India, because China and India are the biggest neighbors. They are also the biggest nations of Asia. That and also they are also our neighbors as well, and that we can also say that we are not lucky as well. Another point were to raise is that these two countries are selling weapons to the military, and that is something we cannot ignore, something we cannot forget, because it's not only about the diplomatic channel, diplomatic communication. These are the two countries which are supplying weapons to the military, and that these weapons are that's being used by the military against the people, and that's something that we all need to do as well. That so these are they are also the permanent members of the UN Security Council, so they can also exercise veto power against any issue as well. So we have to be careful. It is important that organization or international organizations, so that we all need to be careful. We all need to engage with each other, and whenever we raise the issue is that we are asking for the arms embargo against the military, that by having the close arms embargo against the military, then we'll be able to stop the military from committing further violence against women. We cannot do this because it's just not Russia who is going to play the veto, but so India and China are also part of it. They are also selling weapons to the Myanmar military, and this is something we need to take into consideration. So that's the first point that I would like to make. Regarding ASEAN, when it comes to ASEAN, in the past and that before under the general Than Shwe military regime, ASEAN has been silent, and ASEAN was silent, but ASEAN is no longer silent like back in the days under the general Than Shwe. They don't do that anymore. They can no longer do that, and it's also because that China, because they are also concerned that there is also concern from China that the Western countries will come in. That's why they are pushing ahead on ASEAN, and that ASEAN 5-point consensus to resolve the Myanmar crisis as well. But ASEAN 5-point consensus, ASEAN has reached that decision. ASEAN had a meeting with the Myanmar. It was in April 2021, and they reached ASEAN 5-point consensus. But in every member state, they don't have a common consensus. They don't have a common position regarding Myanmar crisis. They all agree that they must resolve the issue. But how do they resolve the issue? How they want to resolve it? They have different approaches. They have different ideas when it comes to Myanmar as well. Actually, ASEAN is kind of like it's like a club of the dictators as well. That authoritarian club right now. So that if they support the Myanmar's revolution, then they are afraid that there will be repercussions, that the people in their country get inspired and will also try to move as well. And they have to worry about their own concern, their own issue as well. So this is also another challenge that they have. So as a regional organization, they have their own concerns too. But at the same time, like African Union, that it's not like European Union or African Union, because ASEAN is very different from that as well, and that the EU
တနိုင်ငံချင်းစီရဲ့နိုင်ငံရေး
have policies that works as well, but
ဒီတဲ့သဘောထားမရှိတာကတော့အဆန်းမဟုတ်ဘူးပေါ့ဒါပေမဲ့
so but they don't have a political framework, they don't have a common political position, so that in reality the ASEAN member states do not have the common agreement. Is nothing to be wonder about, but ASEAN have this policy of no insurance, and ASEAN needs to reach consensus before making a decision. So they have this policy of absolute consensus as well, and they also have the non-interference, so it can be difficult, and this is something we need to raise the point as well. What they did do, what ASEAN had done something as well, which is like not inviting Myanmar to the summits. They are not inviting Wana Maoling as the foreign minister meeting in November. What they have set up anew is that the Ministry of Defense has no longer invited to the ASEAN Ministry of Defense meeting as well, and that is ASEAN raised the bar in the response as well, despite the challenges, despite the different member states having different positions, that they were able to push ahead with it. Indonesia, before it becomes the chairman of ASEAN in January, back in September, there was a ministerial level meeting that the Indonesian hosted about the transport. But for example, Indonesia did not invite the SAC Minister for Transport as well. So this year, in particular, it is important that there has been a lot of pressure for the implementation of the 5-point consensus as well, that the UN also is not being able to do that. So they are also doing a lot of all these points, and I think it is important to understand that. And then Malaysia and that embassy that's also doing this one as well, and that it is also that they are also putting pressure on that as well. That all these other 5-point consensus is, if we look at it from 1 to 5, and that it is that's something that is not addressing the root causes of the conflict.
ကျမတို့2နှစ်တောင်ရှိသွားပြီဘာမှဒီ5ချက်ကဘာမှခရီးမရောက်เนาะအဲ့ဘာမှခရီးမရောက်တဲ့ဒီ5ချက်ကြီးကိုပဲဒီစစ်အုပ်စုစီပဲတော်တော်ပြီးဥတိုက်နေတဲ့ဥစ္စာပြဿနာရှိတယ်ဒါကြောင့်မလို့ကျမတို့ပြောနေတာခုနတယောက်လဲဟိုနားထောင်တဲ့တယောက်လဲ comment ပေးနေတယ်
Apparently this 5-point consensus does not work.
ခေါင်းဆောင်နေနဲ့ဟလာဒီအိန္ဒိယနိုင်ငံတွေနဲ့ပို့ပြီးတော့
Yes, we all know that.
ကျမတို့လည်းတိုက်တွန်းနေတယ်เนาะအခုအထူးသဖြင့်အင်ဒိုနီးရှားကဥက္ကဋ္ဌအနေနဲ့တာဝန်ယူတဲ့အချိန်မှာဒီကျမတို့မြန်မာနိုင်ငံရဲ့
the NUG, NUCC to meet with the regional level ASEAN member countries' government, and we advocate the ASEAN member countries' government to meet with them as well.
အဲ့ဒီဥစ္စာကိုလည်းကျမတို့
We ask
ဒီရှာလွတ်တော်
the
အမတ်
ASEAN
ပြီးသွားလို့ရှိရင်အရက်ဖက်အဖွဲ့အစည်းတွေကိုလည်းကျမတို့လာပြောပြတယ်ပြောပြတော့သူတို့ကလည်းစာနဲ့ပတ်သက်လို့သူတို့ဘက်ကလုပ်ချင်ရှိလုပ်ဖို့ဆိုတာတွေသူရှိနေပါတော့ပြော
with the Indonesian Parliament and with the Indonesian CSOs. They will work on that. For Myanmar revolutionary forces, we should initiate to engage with them, to engage with regional level relations. There are already network dynamic among all these ASEAN member countries. It's just that NUCC and NUG would have to upgrade their engagement with them. And the world know that Myanmar people do not accept the military dictatorship at all. Myanmar people sacrifice their lives and their property in order to get rid of the military dictatorship. It's been almost 2 years that Myanmar people are sacrificing. And another thing that we have to aware of that military always brainwashed people that the military is the savior of the country. We definitely have to overturn that kind of narrative. So it's very important that every track is to be effective and efficient. We are having this armed struggle, we are having this diplomatic campaign and foreign relations and everything. So we definitely have to be on top of everything. So the leaders would have to prove to the world, to ASEAN, to Indonesia, to UN, to international government that we are politically strong in terms of what people want, and we are effective and efficient in our armed struggle. We have to prove that. And we need to make sure that we are effective and efficient in controlling the local area. And if the whole revolution could be seen as the bad, and of course, it's a common sense that everyone would take the winning side. So we have to show to the world that we are the winning side. So this is the job of everybody in 2023. Thank you.
တွေအကြောင်းတွေလည်းပါတယ်ပေါ့နော်အကျိုးစီးပွားတွေအကြောင်းဆိုတာဒီနိုင်ငံတစ်ခုချင်းစီကနိုင်ငံရေးနိုင်ငံခြားရေးမူဝါဒပဲဘယ်လိုပဲချချသူတို့ကအကျိုးစီးပွားပေါ်အခြေခံပြီးချတယ်လို့ပြောပေမဲ့တစ်ချိန်တည်းမှာလည်းကျွန်တော်တို့မြန်မာနိုင်ငံရဲ့လက်တွေ့အနေအထားကဒီတကယ်ကို
although the many countries say that their policy according to their commercial interests, but in a country like Myanmar where there is so much injustice, it's incredible to see that the countries which are putting their own interests, at first, our neighboring countries. So if I were to quote one of our speakers, then is it just bad luck? Or we cannot change the neighbors. Even if we want to stay with them as the neighbors, we are attached to each other territorially. We are connected to each other. So there are problems with that. So it can be very difficult for us to think about the way forward. How do we move forward? I think it is also important that our neighboring countries try to understand about our country politics. We also need to try to understand them. What are their worries? What are their concerns? That the fact that they do not support their revolution, people of Myanmar, the youth of Myanmar are calling them as cowards, that they lack the courage. But what are their concerns? What are they worried about? What is that they worry to support the revolution? So a lot of speakers have shared a lot of points. Now I would like to give a turn to the commentators. Also, we have also had people who have raised their hands. I'm going to invite them a chance to speak. If you want to, I don't see any hands. So if you want to ask questions, please raise your hand. You have the floor. Please also let us know clearly who your question is for. So Interview University, please go ahead. Hello, can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you. So my first question is to Auntie Dr. La Jozo. In China, it's a super powerful country. It's a neighboring country, and that there are also many organizations. I will use them as ethnic revolutionary that I don't use them as insurgents, anything. So there is also what we can say there is also the connection, economic connection. There is also economic collaboration with China as well. But when you look at the Chinese, commercial ethics. China seems to be, taking advantage of Myanmar because being a stronger country. This is something that China always, bullying Myanmar commercially, or China always exploiting Myanmar? It's something I don't think the Beijing leadership, are they ignoring it, or are they aware about it? What can we do for the Chinese leadership know about it? As to the Lanchan call, China does not respond to the Myanmar, and that SAC request for it, they didn't respond to that. Yes, they didn't. They may not respond, but they are also at the same time they are still selling Myanmar military weapons. They are selling Myanmar weapons to Pakistan. That ethically, China should not be doing that. So that's my second point. So based on the two points, and as for the OBOR one road, that China this is OBOR implementation, Myanmar is key to the implementation of one road project, but China focus too much overly on their own interests. So for that, most of our revolutionary forces, it is difficult, and they're not listening to the voice of the people, and that it is not just that it doesn't matter what kind of cut it is. The most important is to catch the rat, so to speak. So China has a change. They don't care what kind of government is power. So long as there's a government, that's their focus on. Why is China not focusing on the issues of the people? China needs to be able to say something about this revolution, even if there is even if they act that the silent diplomacy. So my question is, what can we do? What can people do to that? Okay, my second question is to Dr. Ohmar, that as to the ASEAN 5-point consensus, so the EU supported, UN supported, US talk about it as well, but their voices are not in a way united. They don't go. These voices are not going the same way. So the voice of why can't the EU or the UN or the US or the ASEAN work together to have a united voice, maybe more of a collaborative leadership? Can they not work on it as a collaborative leadership? For that to happen, what can we do? So these are my two questions to both to two speakers, Dr. Hajoso and Dr. Ohmar, respectively. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you for asking that question, and that your questions actually reflect the topic of our today's discussion. So, Dr. Hajoso, do you want to respond to the question first? I think the question that was raised have 3 points. Firstly is the way China act in business and commercial interests. Second is about the sales of weapons, and the third question is about the OBOR or that Silk Road project or One Belt One Road. Regarding the economy, yes. The way that China act in Myanmar when it comes to economic action is that they are bullying, exploiting. It's only in Myanmar. It's the same inside China as well, because China economy is a free market economy, so they give opportunity to the private companies. So there's some of these private companies, well, that they do not follow the rules and regulation. They would always try to trick, and they always try to find loopholes as well. But in China, there is strong reaction, and they take action as well. In China, that after 2018, China has been taking serious action against them. So they have been able to control to an extent within China, but they don't seem to be able to control others, acting like this. Well, they say that's a win-win economy or win-win economy practice, but that they do business because they do it only for the commercial interest, and that they would try to find a way to cheat the laws and the rules, and before they to be able to get in interest and benefit as well. In a country like Myanmar, where we don't have legal rule of law, it's what it was. It is happening in China. Even the government knows about it, they cannot control it. They are struggling to control it as well. Like, for example, like the Alibaba platform, that the government has to take legal action against them and send us to prison or punish them. That's happening inside China. We can say that it's worse in other countries, and that China cannot control their Chinese companies or entrepreneurs and the way they act in other countries. What is important, we need in Myanmar is a government that represents the rights of the people, that represent the interests of the people. Because if not, everybody will try to exploit the security as much as possible. To respond to your point about the weapons, you said it yourself in your comments that China is selling selling them from the Pakistan. There is a black market for the weapons as well, and the China also had to do a lot with it for the Chinese army as well. When they upgrade the Chinese army, and then the weapons which are outdated or the weapons they are no longer using, they sell them freely as well. That before, like you're saying, that they will sell these weapons. Some of these weapons will end up in the hands of the border AOs, and some of the weapons will go to the Laos border or the Thai border. These are the black markets of this border. That's nothing new. And just other day, I saw the news in the Yahoo that the weapons sent by EU, and the EU will go to the Ukraine, about only 10% reach Ukraine, and the majority of the weapons end up in the Middle East weapons market. That's how the black market is big. And that comment is about the OBOR, that One Belt One Road project. Yes, OBOR is important because China look at Myanmar as a west door, the door to the west, the door to the west part of the Asia. Like a WTC port in Myanmar is extremely important for China in terms of connectivity. As I have made the point earlier, China claims right now is that communities of shared dynasty. That's what China is claiming for. They need connectivity for that. And China even have an Asian proverb that if you want to be rich, you need to build roads. That's what China is doing. That's what China is working so much on the investment and on the connectivity. Not just in Myanmar, China has already built a lot of railroads to the Europe as well, to Indonesia. Just the other day, they opened a connectivity road to Indonesia. Now from the town I live in, now you can have a train to Laos, or from Laos you can go to Thailand. By building these railroads, China wants to have the asset, as I mentioned. They want to build a supply chain in Southeast Asia. From Thai, you'll be able to go to Malaysia. From Malaysia, you'll be able to Singapore. You'll be able to go every country in the ASEAN. There are people who like them. There are people who don't like them. As for me, that I watch the documentaries from the China. I only have access to China news from the China, so I don't know how Laos see that. But for Laos claims that says that according to the Chinese media, Laos is very happy about this event. And there are also different parts in this Chinese New Year. A lot of people from different parts of the southeastern part, they'll be going to Laos for visit. That is it can be great for the development as well. Another important point to look at is that Laos is one of the poorest among the ASEAN states, but now they are number 8 in the ASEAN. There is economic progress, economic development. It is important to look at how the countries are making progress out of their work as well. That's why I'm trying to give you answer to the 3 questions. Thank you. May I ask you a follow-up question? Sorry about that. So that we have never seen a country that gets rich because of China. If you look at Sri Lanka, if you look at African countries, they are all in the debt trap. It is they are all that China only look at their own interests, their own interest. There had never been any country which gets richer from the course of China. If you look at Philippines, so I'm not supporting the US or the West as well. We've seen in ASEAN countries where there's a South Asian country which work with the US, they develop like Philippines. With China, we have been doing trade for 30 years. They never think about us, they think about the people. Chinese government does not think about the people of Myanmar either. So that if you rather than what they're doing is that we have seen is that China, in the way China has given bribes to the Myanmar government to be able to get it. You are experts, you know more about us than we do, so I'm sure you will have a better knowledge. You will also be able to communicate better to the Chinese side as well. Thank you for that. In regard to Sri Lanka and the debt trap, that I think it was in a VOA, and I think I have already in an interview I've already talked about it as well. Sri Lanka that Sri Lanka ambassador to China has responded in the Sri Lanka has a lot of international debts, but these are the debts that have existed since the colonial period. Yes, and Sri Lanka has a lot of Chinese debt as well, and but it's not Chinese debt. It's not even 10%. 10% of the 10% as well. 10% of the international debt. Regarding the debt trap, that just the other day, Africa Union is being there was a meeting with the Chinese Chinese new foreign minister went to Ethiopia at the meeting, and he said that about the debt trap is actually that is always Western countries trying to disparage the image of China as well. Ethiopia is one of the countries, one of the poorest countries in the world, and these poorest countries are working with China, and that if you say that they have a that I will give you an example as well. If you look at solar energy the factory in Ethiopia, you may say that none of the countries have ever gotten rich by working with the solar ray. That is it's a solar power energy. They are even able to connect national grid. They are even selling to other countries now. So in Africa, maybe you may have heard about it, that Hillary Clinton even called it the Black Continent before, and she was discriminatory. She was looking down on the Africa to say that there is nothing in these countries, in this continent. But if you look at Africa now, just the other day, Biden had a meeting with the meeting, and they had organized a seminar with the African leader. They are following China, and what Biden said is that Biden said that they don't tell any country to follow anyone. They say you can follow whichever country is of most greatest interest for you. I would like to see that some of the news, especially, is that when you have the entire news media have a Western influence, then some of the news they have are not correct, are not true. So it is important to be aware about it. Like we have to be careful about the debt trap, and that China have already explained it very vehemently about the debt trap as well. Like for example, like solar ray, and that as well, and that solar power is in Germany, and they don't share the technology out there. It was China who is making the technology accessible to all. In Myanmar, that is in Myanmar, despite the lack of electricity from really and others, they are bringing in that solar, and the solar panel is only goes for 200 yuan, and if you get two solar panels, the people want to go back from that, they can set up the video show, they can set up, and that's the Chinese technology, that's the Chinese support going to Myanmar. And then maybe have you heard of like the that magnetic train, the train that is called the high-speed trains. Japan has the technology, European countries have technology, but also China, they buy those such trains, and they reverse engineering, and they produce their own. They open the high-speed train everywhere. If you look at now Africa, in Ethiopia, from Addis Ababa to the other African country, that was a railroad built by China. Nobody is building any road. China is doing that. So in some of the issues, like you're saying, it is important to look at it from all angles. And it would be better if you study from the all angles. I live in China, I read Chinese news, and I research Chinese media, so that I know that how that the way that China, how that I have always learned about also when we look at as well, that how China is careful about it as well. Since since Chairman Mao period, and that in Tanzania, and that another country, China have that made a lot of investment to build railroad there. So China and Africa has a strong relationship in my mind. So these are the questions. So we are now discussing based on the questions. So it's not really related to the topic, and that as well. And that in addition, if we were to talk about China issue, then it is important that there was also the news media war as well, and that and that the way that Chinese media are thinking, and that we know that Chinese media's reporting also very greatly in something we agree on. So I think we welcome such talks and that the topic, because of the time constraint, so we'd like to go to another topic as well, and that in another question I think was for Siama Kilma, so we'd like to go to the second question. We also have a few other questions, so we'll take these questions, then we'll wrap up the show. So Siama Kilma, please respond to the question. Thank you. So I understand your question as that ASEAN and EU, as well as that there are 5-point consensus, but ASEAN and EU as UN, they may have different approaches. So how can we have a collaborated and coordinated approach? I was listening. So I did take the note of the question, but I hope that was a question, to have a coordinated approach. Was it the question? Yeah, please confirm. Yes, this was my question, because all the different countries are talking about the pushing hard on ASEAN, but they also speak in different voices. So how can we have how can we have like a united or the collaborative leadership together? Yes, they talk. There is a lot of saying as well, and that in the past 2 years, we for the ASEAN to be able to have that unified voice or decision. We have started this issue in the beginning of the Spring Revolution, but the ASEAN Fiber Consensus, as I explained before, is where they invited Myanmar to a summit and pushed Myanmar to agree to this. It was only that, and that it is not really a real consensus, because it was they just asked the questions to Myanmar to find a solution to Myanmar, and that formula is wrong, because they are not consulting other stakeholders in Myanmar. That's the first point. And the second point is it's not also the same position from the other ASEAN members. We talked to, since then, we say that ASEAN alone cannot resolve the Myanmar crisis. We also talk this community, and that your ASEAN alone will not be able to deal with the Myanmar issue as well. That we have a lot of conflicts, and that the problems, socio-economic crisis in Myanmar cannot be resolved by ASEAN alone. It is important to find like-minded countries, like-minded organizations, like-minded organizations to work together to find the solution. That's what we have raised. What we are highlighting is ASEAN alone cannot address this. Maybe Security Council can make a decision. There will be a clear answer. However, the Security Council has permanent members like Russia and China and India, so there will, it won't reach a decision. So the ASEAN 5-point consensus and UN form a Security Council to go beyond that. Then the countries with like-minded ideology need to gather together to work on this. So we can say that there is it is effective to an extent, because in ASEAN there are countries like Thailand and Vietnam and Laos that don't agree with each other. The Indonesia and Malaysia and work together with Singapore. They don't know how to talk about this issue in ASEAN, but they talk to each other and try to approach on their own. So these are the global approaches we are seeing. Like you're saying, all the other countries, the UN or US, or they gather together in the format of the Friends of Burma, Friends of Myanmar before. The kind of grouping, the kind of coordinated approach is something we haven't been successful so far. And that said, it's because the countries also look at their own national interests, just like China is doing. That if you look at the ASEAN 5-point consensus, is something that China has really pushed hard on, because China has pushed hard on that, so other countries cannot conclude that. In a way, by having the 5-point consensus, China is blocking other countries from supporting or the part of the Myanmar process as well, and that's why the ASEAN we have to push ahead and always. So please let this issue be resolved by the regional country. That's why we have to do a lot of mobilizing. We have to do advocacy. We have to do criticism. We have both open door meetings. We have closed door meetings. We have to do a lot of that. And then I'm sure NUG also is doing similar things as well. And that there are also other countries who are also working with us for that as well. But for us to reach that level, I think there are some small changes are happening slowly and steadily. So yeah, maybe you notice as well in ASEAN, we have ASEAN have a special envoy to Myanmar. Thailand have a special envoy for Myanmar. EU have a EU special envoy for Myanmar. Japan also already had a Japan special envoy for Myanmar for the past 10 years. Well, that because of the and that you know that somebody from the so they even have appointed you know the person who did from the war crimes was appointed as a Myanmar Japan special for peace. So actually there are many special envoys or the envoy for peace regarding Myanmar as well. They don't have a concerted efforts. They don't have a consolidated effort taking action and to be able to push for the policy. We don't have that. So it's not the same as a response to Ukraine. I'm sure there are also many reasons for that, and that I think it is also important that could happen because of the many reasons. It is important to push hard from our side as well. We have listened to the response of the speakers to the questions and to the comments, and I'm also hearing and that some of the questions we have received are also has also been covered by the previous question as well. So we are at a certain time, and we also like to thank all our speakers for giving us your time, Elsa. And would like to wrap up, but we also would like to give the speakers any comments or any last point to make as well regarding the topic of how to change the ideology, the mindset of our neighboring countries on the revolutions here. Any comments? Any last comment you want to make? Yes, Myanmar is in the public movement for democracy. Myanmar democratic movement is not successful as it should be, as it should have been. Not in the 1988 and also in 2021. It's not as successful as it could have been or it should have been. On the other hand, during the revolution, that the goal that we have set up and that what the journey, that the path that we are on, it seems also that we are also kind of slow as well. In 2023, so that it is important to have that the goal that the revolution want to reach in 2023. Some of the goals, some of the visions have not realized as well. On the other hand, when we talk about reform in Myanmar, in particular, the reform depends on the people of Myanmar. The neighboring countries are not as important the people, they are second most important. They come after the people of Myanmar, in fact. So the neighboring countries, if we look at the context of neighboring country, if we look at before looking at the context of India, it is important that people of Myanmar, especially those that who are leading the revolution, as well as on the NUG, it is important that NUG has that NUG needs to have the trust of the people, and they need to have the trust of the ethnic community as well. Right now, those that who are working formally hand in hand officially with NUG, and if you look at it from the EAOs, they aren't that money. Some of them may be supporting as well. Those who have ratified an agreement with the NUG, there's only CNF, the KIA or KNU or the AA or the many other ethnic and the revolution organization, including ASEAN. So there are many of them, but they are not. I think NUG has not been able to collaborate with these EAOs effectively. But on the other hand, there is also weakness in terms of policy from the NUG side as well. So for us, for NUG, is it that NUG has also pushing and driving that revolution using their federal democracy charter, and that many of the politicians also have pointed out that interim with the transitional constitution, that a movement will be better. There will also with the transitional constitution, there will be more trust from the ethnic and the EROs as well, and that's something I also believe in as well. And that China itself is also that India is a world biggest democratic nation, but they are not listening to the will of the people. They are ignoring the will of the people. Is that because it could be because that those who are leading the our political frontline or revolutionary front are not or have not been able to build trust with India, because they do not have trust from India. To build trust with India, to gain India trust, it is important to have the trust of the ethnic communities, and it is important that India can build trust with all the most of the majority ethnic groups. Then you'll be able, NUG will be able to gain trust from India as well as the ASEAN member states. That will also, with more participation from the ethnic communities and the EROs, then we'll be able to show that highlight that the violation of human rights, and that the impact of the violence of the weapons that these countries have been selling, will be able to highlight that, and that will also bring us closer to the goal of the revolution. So, Moderator also, any closing remarks? When I look at the geopolitics of Myanmar, India and Myanmar is right between the India and China, big superpower countries. It is unfortunate, and there are also opportunities, because in every case there are both pros and cons. If you look at the Myanmar history, we also have we have Khins like Kalajaming killed by the India, or Tiobiami, who had to run away because of the China. But Myanmar identity have always existed, and that I think it is that Myanmar has been able to hold on to is that is ethnicity, is identity. I'm very proud of that as well. India, its policy is the Lookist policy, and then the China is working hard on the opening the western door, or the western gateway. That's why China want to build a corridor through Myanmar. If we can use it effectively as an opportunity, that will contribute to the economy of Myanmar, that will also strengthen Myanmar economy as well. So it doesn't matter whatever the case is. I think it is important to look at it from both positive and negative side. That's all I would like to share. Thank you. Siama Kilma, any last comments? Yes. The way I see it, 2023 is after 2 years of revolution, after 2 years of atrocities, 2 years of military consistent, relentless efforts to be able to gain control power of the country. It's been 2 years now. Like Salai and Thang, I would like to encourage you, Sia, that during 2 years they have been, committing violent crimes. They have, that there has been 2 years of the people who have been resistant against the military successfully. They are not a military regime. They are a legitimate military hunter. They have committed the coup, that they even violated their own constitution. If you look at it, the international law, domestic law, they are illegitimate in any way. So since 98, those who have been working the revolution since 88 said, yes, what we wanted, we have expected, we are not able to eradicate the military dictatorship back in 1988. But this spring revolution, this time, however, we're seeing something the military have never encountered. The military has never faced the kind of challenge before. They are facing an extreme challenge on the ground, that in areas like Salai, like central Myanmar, this is the Burma, that this is the area. There is also the Burma dominant area where the Burma Khins have always come, and there is always a Burma majority area like Salai is now they're resisting against the military strongly. So it's quite difficult for them. They cannot even set up the military camp in Salai. That's why they're using area strikes. That's why they're conducting bombing. There is in a revolution which there are no other countries in the world. They have to conduct area strikes against against the resistance movement inside the country. So in a way, our revolution has not reached its goal yet. But the efforts of the different forces, especially that of the youth, that of the Generation Z, and that your commitment, your bravery, your innovation, and your resilience is something military has never encountered before. Back in our days, back in 1980, or we call it the EROs, that ethnic terminal, but but if you say terminal or the army, and that we don't, it's like the military, so we don't call it. So we have the EROs. We went into the liberated areas where there was no revolution on the ground in the urban area or in the rural area. Back in the days, now apart that the previous military regime, and that what they did was they say there will be a parliamentary election, and the politicians follow the track. Those youth like us who joined the revolutionary movement in the liberated area, nobody wants to talk to it. None of the politicians want to work with. That was the days. That was our day. It is not like this now. It is different now. And that if you look at it, and that it is important to understand this is armed resistance have never been that never been recognized. It is all any resistance in Myanmar. Myanmar has been always armed resistance. Myanmar always been ethnic communities. Now there is armed resistance across the country among the Burma to end that has never happened before, and it's a very important progressive in Myanmar for the change to happen. We can say that this revolution has never been as strong as before. I'm not just talking to this lieutenant, I'm talking to all the people. This is something we have learned from the lesson from our generation. It is incredible that the military has never seen such kind of resistance. It is important to build it stronger. It is important to maintain the momentum that among the NUG and the ERO leaders, and that we need to have more. We need to have a more consolidation. We need to see a more united approach among the NUG and ERO leaders, and that's what also something I would like to see as well. This is important. The NUG and UCC ERO leaders, we always advocate them as well. Wherever we go, whether they know us or not, whether they like us or not, we don't care. I know that there are people who don't like us. We do that. We promote them. We try to advocate them, both the NUG and UCC leaders and the ERO leaders, because it is important to get their political legitimacy recognized. Why? Because political legitimacy, their legitimacy is the right legitimacy. NUG has a legitimacy. EROs have the legitimacy, and their legitimacy is correct. And their legitimacy important for the country. So whether we like them or not, whether they like us or not, we support them. But we cannot stop there, because in 2023, Allah or the Be Online is is in that so to be that's what, and that it is important also to overcome it as well, and that for the politically, for diplomatically, and also that it is also that it is important for us to work hand in hand as well, the coordination as well. It is important that 2023 be our strength as well. So this is a message I would like to give. Just take 2023 as a year for momentum to push harder for a more of a coordinated, concerted approach to this revolution, to the street, to the heroes of this revolution, to the both comrades, both that male and female, to the youth and the different age groups, all the revolutionary forces. It is important for all of us to work together and to rally for to achieve the ultimate goal of this revolution. So I would like to say thank you on behalf of the People's Code team to all our speakers as well, because the goal of our talk show is that it's a talk show where we have that members of the People's Soldiers team as well as on their families can also learn about the ideology as well. It is also important that we are able to learn about the mindset and the thinking of the different neighboring countries in this revolution. We also need to have a better understanding about the mindset so that we can carry forward. We can carry forward for this revolution. As moderator, I would like to resume 3 key points from this edition. That one thing that the most important demand that people are making this revolution is independence, is freedom, and that is the rights, the human rights that people are entitled to. We're not talking about material aims. It's not about getting development in Myanmar or anything as well. What the people are asking for is independence, for that what the people are asking for. I think it is important that neighboring countries understand what people are really asking for in this revolution, not about other material things or development. Secondly, we talk about neighboring countries, and some people think that it's only about their diplomatic relations. No, what we are talking about is more than diplomatic relations. It's not just it's more than the beyond that the mandate of the NUG Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We are talking about there's need to be have a more people to be engaged. It is important more people reach out to the people of India, reach also the people of China as well. And through this engagement, that we hope that we'll be able to reach and give the message, and to be able to make people understand that some like the systems can be horrible, and the system needs to be eradicated, and that is something we can convey the message to the people as well. And that so last point I would like to make is that is a comment given by one of the participants. It is important not to judge, not to gauge, not to judge the neighbors. We also need to judge ourselves. We all need to reflect ourselves. Have we been good neighbors to this country as well? Because we are all, it is important for the citizen of Myanmar, for the other citizens, and that all the other human beings. How do we act as a good neighbors to them as well? So these are the three key messages I would like to convey from the talk show. I'd like to thank you, the participants, or those who have commented, the comrades, and each and every one of you. Thank you very much for joining us. And let me end our today's talk show here. Let's see you again next week, same time on Sunday.